India is changing. We're transitioning from mobility to e-mobility. Both, there's a convergence of both. So let's start with, what is mobility today? You know, for different sections, it means different things. For the Maruti consumer like me, it was kitna dete hai in the car, right? And it was always about the mileage, right? That's changed, obviously, with the younger generation. I'll let you gentlemen, you want to talk about it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's very easy. Mobility means going from point A to point B, right? It's
That's
as
it?
simple as that.
As simple as that.
But there are two parts to it. One is, of course, this commodity part, which is I want to go to work, I want to go drop my son to school, which is essentially fixed route. And the other part of it is I want to drive out on the weekend. It's also mobility. I want to head out for a long drive with my kids. So there are different aspects and different ecosystems being built. But for me, mobility is about going from A to B.
Okay, interesting. And Drivezy knows all about that, right? How many of you have used Drivezy, guys? That's quite a few. Great.
So I think for us, mobility or e-mobility does not matter much. It's about an asset traveling a set fixed kilometers every day. Because in sharing economy, monetization of an asset is quite important for it to be sustainable so that the cost of fractional ownership goes down as more people use it. So for us, the driving point is how many kilometers an asset could be driven a day. On e-mobility, we still think it's early days in India. So 20 years back, when petrol stations were a rare commodity, people had the same apprehension that if I go outside the city, will I find a petrol station or will I run out of gas? The same situation is still persistent in e-mobility. People really don't know whether they would get a charging station or not. Until you get out of this fear on the UX side, it's not going to grow. So we think infrastructure has to come ahead of getting more bikes on road. People should be more convenient, relaxed, and then you'll see the sales of e-mobility going up. And according to me, last 6 years, only 4,000 proper cars are sold out, so which are
in e-mobility, right?
In e-mobility.
I think the last number was 7,000 this year, but yes, you're right. How many of you have used Ather, guys? Have you gone to their showrooms? Lovely, right? So you want to talk
right
about...
opposite my house.
That's in Indiranagar, right? Go on, Ravneet.
Have you tried it?
Yeah.
Great.
So, tell us about, Ather, and you guys have been one of the early movers in the mobility space, in the e-mobility space. You're actually trying to influence all these people to actually look at an alternative for two-wheelers, ICE two-wheelers, that is, internal combustion engines. How's it going so far?
So I think it's been a really interesting ride over the last few years, and specifically last year when we launched in Bangalore and about 2 months back in Chennai. And you started the conversation asking about pollution and the PM scores and all that. So fundamentally, if there's a larger issue of pollution, of bad quality of air, etc., and if e-mobility is one solution to a gamut of other solutions that need to come into play, then really the question is that what role do we play as mobility companies in transitioning people to EVs? Now, it is our strong and actually a very strong belief that the only way to drive people in hordes, in millions, to better into EV electric vehicles is not to appeal to that side that says, hey, save the world and save the planet and save the environment, etc. Reality is, whether we admit it or not, nobody wants to pay money to save the world, because saving the world is somebody else's problem, not my problem. So the fastest way to move people is to create and give products that people desire, which is strong aspirational products, which are equal to or better than their petrol counterparts. So give them a legit reason to move from what they use. And fundamentally, if you look at I'll take a minute here, Vishal, on this one. If you look at the market today, why is it that despite all the moves by the government, people, etc., why is it not happening? Why is the transition not happening? And whatever I'm saying now and over the next half an hour is I'm limiting myself to two-wheelers, which is what area I know best. So see it in that context, and Karl, maybe he can talk about, is that nobody moves from a better technology to a worse technology, right? If you look at scooters and motorbikes, they are pretty good products. They're reliable, they run well, they have a good drive feel. So if you want to move people to e-mobility, you have to give them a better or certain equal solution, right? But if you look at majority of products in the market today, if you look at scooters, these guys don't go beyond 35, 40 kilometers per hour. If there are two people sitting, they won't climb a flyover. You'd be, if you are two people on the vehicle, you can't come out of a parking lot in a basement. Now, why would anybody ever want to move from what they currently have to something which is worse? So the only way to do it, right, and any category, forget mobility, any category in the world never start from bottom up. Is fundamentally get a great product, drive aspiration, drive desire. You establish the goodness of the new solution, and eventually early adopters come in, and then and then it percolates, the price costs come down, etc., etc. So from our perspective, the reason we launched what we did was, which is Ather 450, which is the most expensive scooter you can buy in the country today, is because fundamentally we believe that it has to come from that side. And I think in the last 1 year, I think it's been proven, at least from our perspective, is that despite whatever stereotypes we have about India being a value-conscious market, there are always people who will pay more for more if you can demonstrate clearly that there is more that we're offering. So that's our story.
Amit, to build on that, you've actually built a category in this city, right? I've seen CEOs wearing suits go on those EVs of yours, those little ones. Right, so what's happening with Yulu? You're expanding. What's been the impact? Does the government talk to you now?
So I'll tell you the narrative, how things have changed for us. So we started off as a bicycle company back in January 2018. Saw people started using because they were not finding Ola and Uber. Working in EcoWorld, EcoSpace, living in Adarsh Farm Retreat, going to Intel. Dreadful experience in the car for sure. And when we put those bicycles on those areas, people just immediately started using it. And then we saw that the use cases were limited to 1 or 2 kilometer max. People in the suit, they didn't want to get sweat. And for us, putting a motor to the vehicle was the obvious choice. We looked at the solutions of the market, and the easy one was, taking an Activa or a scooty, put an IoT device and put it on shared mobility. But because we had some wisdom of the operations, what it means to solve for this A to B, which is a less than 5 kilometer distance. So our business model is different in Drivezy, where I take the vehicle for a month, it's my baby, I take care of it. But in case of Yulu, we basically do a sachet sizing of 1 to 2 or 5 kilometer distance. And the requirement of that business model is very, very different. So like my father's age, where his scooter will be like his second, like another baby or wife, whatever you can say, take care of them like crazy. But in the shared mobility, the products are being abused. They've been used very differently. They will be exposed to sun, water, rain, whatever you can think of. So
the whole theft also.
Or theft also. So the whole thinking was around that, okay, this is a context. Can we use an Activa or a scooty? And I think we were very clear that probably this is not the good solution for that. And that's why we ended up taking a punt of designing something for more bottoms up, which is created for shared mobility, less number of parts, which can fail, easy to ride, and simple enough for anyone to just go get on it without basically any fear.
And you show them the range. Get to the corporate on time, get to your office on time. That's the whole deal.
Correct. And unlike the perception that EV is very expensive, which by the way, I'm also a very happy, active, Ather user as individual capacity. But when we are talking about a mass use case of first mile, last mile, then we needed something much more practical, which is cheaper, durable, can handle abuse, etc. And with that thesis, we got into EV with a full stack solution. So not only we design our own vehicles, we got them made through a partner. We had designed our own charging stations, put them in a distributed manner across the city where we are operating. And we have entire value chain of EV mobility. In fact, we are the largest EV mobility company in the country right now.
Give them a round of applause, guys. Come on. That's amazing.
As per my understanding, even bigger than my friend's company, Ather. So they have delivered less scooter than the number of vehicles we have put on the road. And we have sorted this whole thing in a very big manner. And we think that the foundation we have put together not only is operationally working for us, but consumers are also loving it, the convenience part of it. And we think it's just a matter of time. You will see hundreds of thousands of vehicles from Yulu and maybe a couple of more competition because they will understand the template, what we have got, and hopefully they will also learn from that. And hence, we will be collectively able to move mobility to e-mobility for real. I actually see absolutely no challenge in making that happen in next 12 months.
Okay, so Nakagawa-san, I need a global perspective from you. I mean, I was looking at the numbers. In electric mobility, we've raised only about 350 million in this country. If you take off 300 million from, I mean, I'm not including, Ather here. If you take out Ather and Ola, then it's only about 40 million or something invested in e-mobility in India. But in the global perspective, from Japan's perspective, what's happening? Can you throw some light on us? And would you like more and more people to come into electric mobility and set up startups? It's a big opportunity in India, and you will have to invest in them.
Uh, yeah, definitely e-mobility is one of the main focus area of like Japanese industries. Looking at the Japan market, for example, like 1/10 of like working population is working mobility industry in Japan. And then like they all realize they need to make like kind of platform providing the connectivity to 2B customers and 2C customers and evolve to the next level of like, transportation solutions. And very good example is SoftBank partnered up with Toyota. Toyota partnered up with Honda and Suzuki. All Japan,
Automobile companies, including SoftBank. Okay,
Yes,
fine.
yes,
SoftBank
yes.
as an investor.
Exactly. And they all realize they cannot work and compete in this revolutionary changing market standalone. So all Japan is like now working on it, investing a huge amount of money into it.
So what's the average ticket size of investment for a startup there?
When
An
it
EV
comes
startup or a mobility startup?
when it comes to the startups in Japan, because of the regulations, it's not like raising that much. But looking at for example, one of the startup coming up from Finland, Helsinki, the WIM.
I don't know. I mean, Owen, it'll come back to you. Go on. You continue. I mean, we don't know the name of that startup in Helsinki.
Right.
Yeah.
So like the ticket size is definitely like more than 10 millions for that. But like
10
it's
million
still
is
like
average
POC
investment?
stages, so they're like
Okay.
everyone's looking.
So, okay, there's a transition happening in India and it's fast and I'll get back. Mahindras are saying that tomorrow you can just be a platform manager, right? I mean, that's like you guys thinking more like a software company than a hardware manufacturer.
Yep.
Is that the direction? I mean, I know you're not privy to giving that information out, but that's the direction for a lot of us in India, isn't it?
No, eventually, if you look at the customer sentiments and the way consumption economy is shaping up in India, it's all about owning the journeys of customers. It's not about, gone are the days when OEMs could control the ecosystem of what customers do. It's now more about how partners can come together and provide the experience to a customer, which is seamless, hassle-free, at the same time socially relevant, makes them socially relevant, and also gives them a sense of pride in being part of of that ecosystem. So a lot of people have to come together to do
So
that.
you've created something called Glide. Have you guys heard of Glide? Yes, they have. That's interesting.
So we've launched in Mumbai. It's still an experiment of sorts where we've initiated a new concept because in India, shared mobility is not associated usually with luxury or with premiumness. We've set up a vehicle, it's an electric vehicle, which is premium and shared and electric. So it
Say premium,
checks.
it's what? It's like
So it's like a business class seat. You have full privacy, you have rich curated content for you, served for you. You have air purifiers to take care of the first point that you mentioned, the pollution, etc. And it is electric, so there is that comfort of less noise, less vibration, NVH,
so
etc.
it's like I come in and become more productive in the car, and when I come outside, I'm like down.
At least you reach office refreshed
Right.
and not tired by the 1 hour commute that people have in
I mean,
Mumbai.
Ashwarya, we're talking about new business models here. I mean, you pay for the purifier service maybe inside the car. Do you see that happening? Ravneet, you can also take this. There's so many things changing, new business models emerging. Do you see that in your business?
I think as most of our inventory we decide to build use cases which suits complementary to whatever asset utilization we have. So during weekdays, we push our assets to A to B. During weekends, it's basically outstation trips. So in our case, the innovation is much more on the financial side, where we see new products coming up to make sure that the occupancy levels do not fall. And that has been the goal of the company to not. So as an example, Sho mentioned that the entire Japanese industry is creating one single charging infra. In India, the issue is the innovation will happen in 6 different companies. But in Japan, all the 6 manufacturers can use the same.
So they're standardizing everything. And in our
Yes.
country, just like the potholes, we are not standardized anywhere, right?
And
So-
another problem which I think is central to India is we went with the e-dream quite quickly. We should have gone through a phase of hybrid because whenever we try to do innovation in India, I think innovation in India is subjected to raise of capital, which Ather does quite beautifully. That's why they're the best company. But in case of Japan, in case of other countries, there are young companies which are raising funds, and they're not one. There are 6 or 7. So when you have competition, a better product comes out. And Indian government have a high subsidy rate when you import vehicles from Japan or other. They're basically trying to protect the market, which stifles like innovation. So innovation in Indian market has to be frugal. Otherwise, I think it's quite difficult for startups to do
It's
it.
interesting. We're already frugal, right? When we're talking about electric vehicles, it's 15 rupees per 100 kilometers. But the frugality is the hardware side, you mean?
So if you check Tesla's playbook, I think that's what he mentioned. They came from top to bottom. They released their best product, which was gonna sell less.
The Roadster.
Yeah, and then they came down to the the last model. So that's a playbook which everyone has to adopt to make sure. But India, even the top is quite less. So number of people who earn more than 50 lakhs a year is hardly 1.5 million, 15 lakh people. In US, the average GDP is 38,000. So from where does the innovation come, or where does you get your playbook? If you think of bottom to up, then I think Yulu comes up quite good. So there are many ways to do it, and I think consumer is the king. Whoever they choose to.
Would you agree with that, Ravneet?
Yeah, I mean, you spoke about frugality and access to capital, and therefore ability to create new technologies, etc. So I think those are constraints that are real. Which is why when you look at entering this market, unless you have a longer term view to say that, you have like a 10, 15 year horizon, there's no way in hell you're going to invest in this business, right? If somebody has to, come in 3, 4 years, looking for an exit, then there are much easier ways to do that than looking at e-mobility, right? Certainly this is not for the weak-hearted. So the idea is that, but once you create that value, if you can tie it over the next 3 to 5 years, 6 years initial cycle, where you get your maturity, you have a sort of, a good product market fit on your upstream side, your costs are manageable, the supply ecosystem sort of scales up as it is, which is a typical progression of any market. Once those sort of, when there's a perfect storm sort of coming into play, then suddenly, the game looks very, very different. The deal is to try it over the next 5 to 6 years for anybody who comes in, right? Now, you heard an announcement about, Bajaj coming in and they're launching the product next week. It's not that just because Bajaj has been in business for 100 years that they'll have like profitable product. They'll go through the same journey as anybody else would. But that's the bullet you bite if you want to be in this business for a long term, right? And which is why you got to sign up for tough times, 3 to 5 years. Despite a very seductive pull to get a cheap product in, I think it's something that you should really, really avoid.
You should give them the example of the mobile phone industry. We had so many phones.
Yeah, so I think it's my favorite topic, and if I start, I'll take a long time to shut up. So, so I spent many years in Nokia, and he was there as well. So I think what I'm seeing in the EV business is very, very similar to what I saw in the mobile phone business 10 to 12 years back, and that was similar, and that was not confined just to India. That was India, Southeast Asia, Latin America, Africa, all markets, right, which are at a certain sort of a GDP level, where it became super easy to just show up in China, go to Shenzhen, you define what kind of phone you want, define the form factor, the price, the look, etc. You come back home in 6 weeks later, there's a container at your doorstep. You sell it. If it works, fine. If it doesn't, kill it. Go to the next one. Which means that you had no long-term view on the business. You were looking at the market very opportunistically. Anybody who had any money became a brand, which worked really magically well for 2 to 3 years. Everybody thought, hey, man, this is like a magic mantra. But of all the names that whoever remembers from that time, nobody's alive. All players are there. It's because fundamentally what happens is if you don't invest in technology, what is your moat? If everybody is going to the same place, sourcing the same kind of stuff and just repackaging it, then you're commoditizing your own business. Then you start cost cutting and price cutting, and that's the first step to disaster. So what you see today, and I'm hoping I'm proven wrong, is that you will see a lot of players coming in. You already have seen a lot of announcements being made certainly in the two-wheeler space, of which, if I had to bet the farm, I would say that at least 85-90% would not be there 4 to 5 years later.
That's interesting. Amit, how do you want to comment on that? Huh?
No, actually, I agree with Ravneet. Unless you have a core IP of your product, stamping with your name is not going to create value. It's good opportunistic point of view, and which is, I think, some of the people in India were very good at. They keep on. So right now, e-rickshaw is is in vogue. So people will, basically manufacture it. After that, two-wheeler, scooter, maybe a air purifier. So whatever is actually happening in the country, they will just do things, stamp it. We have chosen ourselves to be more like Ather, and not just because Ather is a cool company, but we believe that there's certain fundamental design thing you have to do, innovation you have to do, which are very country specific. We actually, when we were thinking of electric mobility, we got in touch with some friends in Japan, and they had a different agenda altogether. Without naming them, they had like, okay, I have a 3-year plan, and by 3-year, Yulu, what will I do? Just run cycle? No, I have to move on. And then we took things into our hand, particularly around the design and research. So we ended up establishing industrial design team in the company, the engineers who understand automobile, the engineers who understand this whole IoT part, so that we can then work with OEMs, although our intention was never to become an OEM, but we needed to be an expert in mobility with respect to the shared mobility use case, and that actually helped us. And we have chosen ourselves to be frugal, where the charging station, I'm sure that you'll not be knowing the cost dynamics, but even the cheapest charging station available globally will be basically $2,000 at least. We have been able to create a charging station with less than $700.
How much does it usually cost, Amit?
I'm sorry?
How much does a charging station cost? You said yours is 700.
35,000 rupees.
Okay.
One charging station can charge 15 batteries in a go. And we have been able to put that in a distributed manner. So we are not setting up our own charging grids like Sun or Ola Electric. We have been able to use mom and pop stores to host them. And unlike Gogoro, which is a Taiwanese company, where the consumer can take the battery, we have chosen not to let it operation by our consumers. So our own on-ground team goes on those unmanned station, swap a QR code, the battery box open, you take the battery out, and they do the swapping. So we basically have been able to do that with that design thinking, and also making sure that the core IP is being created. So design core IP of Miracle, the design and manufacturing of even charging station is all done internally.
Interesting. Nakagawa-san, would you recommend swap batteries for India, or would it be fixed batteries for India? I mean, because the world over, I think swap hasn't taken off very much, but fixed batteries are very popular in the US too. So who wants to take this?
I think Gogoro landed a 500 million funding by Temasek, and
with swaps?
With swaps, 6-second swapping, and they're called the Teslas of bikes.
So
okay, it's still in the realm of two-wheelers.
A clarification
Yes.
for a shared mobility as a service, I think swappable batteries now becoming the norm.
Fleets.
Becoming the norm. Because cost of transporting a vehicle to charging station and putting it back onto the network is prohibitive. But for the personal vehicle, swappable is not required, and there are actually reasons for that. I'll let Shoshan talk about it.
Yes, I think like a swappable battery will be the norm, as he said, because even in India, like work in terms of unit economics, it's better working. This like, compared to Japan, the wage is much lower. Then like, it's that swappable thing works better in India. So that like compared to Japan, like, it would cost much more, or like other developed countries. So that anywhere else, I think it would work better.
Just to add on, like the major cost of EV vehicle is 40% battery. So if you remove the battery and get it on demand, you're bringing the cost of capital on the unit economic side much more lower. So as you have swappable, I think.
So the fleet is better with swap. And
Definitely.
okay, how many of you guys think that we have solved the electric vehicle charging infrastructure in this country? Show of hands. I mean, no opinion. That means they don't know. But according to Ravneet, it's already been solved, and it's not. It's you guys shouldn't even worry about it when it comes to two-wheelers.
Yeah, so again, this is not about the fleet solution. I'm talking about personal vehicles.
B2C solution.
The B2C, the kind of vehicles that you drive. So essentially, if you look at, and I'm going to share some data with you, and this data is collected over the last 1 year that our customers have ridden our scooters, and that's about 2.8 million kilometers. That's a fair bit of data, right? So an average commute in Bangalore is about 19 and a half or so kilometers per day, and on a weekend is about half a kilometer more. So let's say there's 20, right? Any decent scooter would give you a range of 70, 80, 85 or so. Even if let's take 70, that's 3 days of charge. So you really don't have a reason to charge in field because you have enough charge. So forget that. Most people, I'll say another piece of data now. So we have our own charging infrastructure that we've set up in Bangalore, and today is absolutely free. So anybody can go there and charge and not pay a penny for that, right? Despite that, 96% of charging happens either at home, so about 76% at home, and about 22% of charging happens in office while people are working. So nobody's actually going to a charging station to charge because there is no need. Because the charging behavior, and that's true globally, and this is not just India, is that it's like mobile phone. You know, at night you put it for charging, and you wake up in the morning and you have full charge. So the fact that a lot of people say there is no charging infrastructure and therefore people aren't buying scooters, that is as far away from the truth as it can be, because it's a non-issue. Yes, it's a market education issue. Some people may be nervous, but reality is that in the last 1 year, we've seen our customers, nobody cribs about range anymore because people say, it's 80, 70, 75 that they get is plenty. So charging infra is not an issue. It becomes an issue when you have a fleet solution. It becomes an issue when you have public transport. It becomes an issue if you look at leisure bikes that do long distance intercity. Yeah, sure, you need highways and all that. But for scooters, which is going to be at the forefront of change, which is an utilitarian urban city phenomenon, charging infra is not an issue.
Okay, what is stopping the growth of electric vehicles in our country? I mean, I see a lot of e-rickshaws, especially spread across the northern regions of India. You want to tell me why?
Look, for me, it is not one factor. There are multiple factors, but essentially the core of it is time. It is electric vehicles are going to come to India. It's a matter of time. It's a matter of time before charging infrastructure spreads. People are able to run fleets efficiently and are able to predict, vehicle uptime, etc. It's also a factor of standardization. Right? There would be multiple OEMs. Right now, we don't have choice of supply. We were discussing this earlier.
There's no choice.
There's no choice. There are few vehicles to choose from. And the moment we have more vehicles, we'll need standardization. We'll need a way to charge vehicles in a standard way, communicate to vehicles in a standard way, and in a way monitor fleets in a way where everything can be monitored together. So these are a few factors, but essentially it's a matter of time.
Okay, guys, round of applause to these gentlemen. Okay.